Hello, this is Rex from Recites. In this video, I'm making it somewhat of a departure from my usual format because this time there will be only very brief quotations or citations. It will be mostly by talking to you about a certain event interspersed with some brief citations. What you see on the screen now is part of the cover of a high school yearbook from 1984, which is the year that I retired from West Babylon High School in Long Island, New York. And so I didn't show the whole book because I have things pasted on the two ends of it that would have disrupted my comments here on this. So anyway, from this we will go on to a couple of the verses I wrote at the time. And the first one I call Ruminations upon my retirement. And the first stanza goes like this. There is something I can't confess which I dislike. I have come 59 years down the pike, but I'm good for a few years more. No, not just a few, but for more than a score. Because on life's road I still have a long hike. Okay, now you see it on the screen, and I just want to say a couple of words about it. What I have done there, unwittingly so, really, which is how I do many things, I have made a prediction of sorts. I have predicted that I will live for at least a score beyond the age of 59. Now, a little elementary arithmetic will tell you that a score added to 59 is 79. And since I am at present 90 years old, I have lived a score and a half plus 1 year from that date. And things being continuing favorably, I hope, I might make 2 years. But anyway, my prediction there has come true. Now there is a second stanza to these ruminations on my retirement, and it goes like this. Up until now I have been at sea, being undecided what I should be. A sailor, a soldier, a preacher, or teacher. But they're all useful for my future, you see, especially now that I fiscally autonomous be. Okay, now you see that verse on the screen, and I hope that you all have seen my attempt at making a pun there on the word sea, because my first paying job after high school was being in the Navy. I joined the Navy. And after a little while, when I was discharged in April 46, after the war was over, after a couple of years when civilian life proved a little unsatisfactory, I joined the Army for 7 years. And well before I got out of the Army, I had decided to come out at the end of my enlistment and become a clergyman. So I came out and went and had the proper training to be a pastor or preacher or clergyman. And after I had been that for a while, I decided that I would go out and would stop doing that and become a teacher of high school English, which I did and taught that for 21 years. And what we're talking about today is my retirement party at the end of when I was 59 years old. This was a rather unusual retirement party, because wherever I have been for over a few weeks at a time, I have become known as kind of a wag in different ways. Now, when we were teaching, and I suppose this is still true, we had to write lesson plans every week to cover every day. And these plans were always perused by either our department chairman or in some cases by the principal. And I always managed to squeak through, even though I tried to introduce various notes of humor and plays on words and so on and so forth. And somebody, I never did know who it was, had got a hold of some of my previous lesson plans and brought them, that they thought were a little amusing, and brought them to the party. And as other things were going on, I heard 2 or 3 people say to the neighbors, well, I never saw lesson plans at a party before, but they were chuckling about the lesson plans anyway. So anyway, that brings us to another little little poem that I wrote about against this background. And I need to define the word distaff for you first, because it appears in the poem, and it's such an unusual word that it might need some definition. Distaff means actually women or females. And this is true because a couple of 100 years ago, when they worked with wool and things of that nature, they had a rod that they used, which is called, for some reason, a distaff rod. And since it was usually women who worked with the distaff rods, the word distaff came to mean, in general, women. And so because the format of today's video is so different, I'm going to put this little stanza up on the screen, and you can see it as I read it to you instead of reciting it, as is my usual practice. To my staff and distaff friends, if any, who still have every faculty. Now this implies that after that night of the retirement party, I won't have any more faculties. Okay, now look at this, at the stanza proper. This little red book of Rex Smith lies waiting your comments of pith. Kindly write, if you will, so that wisdom doth fill this book like an old monolith. Now in my typing of that poem, I had the word old monolith in type that looked like little stones, but in this case we don't have it. So many times I like to pass out the little poems that I write with various visual aids in them. And so this implies too that this little red book, after it gets full of these wise comments, can be an old monolith, somewhat similar to the Rosetta Stone or something like that. So to close with,
you know, money makes the whole world go round, but it's the same money that makes a lot of people.
I want to give you a couple of examples of comments that were made in the book. And so if you look on the screen there now, you will see one sample, which of course is almost illegible on the screen because of the quality of transmission, and I have typed out what it says. And this was written by a lady, a colleague called Helen Kleinman. And she says, Dear Rex, who will make those wonderful corny jokes after you're gone? And who will impress the kids with tricks of memory or other wonderful things? Now this is, you can understand that this is one of my favorite comments in this book. The next one is by my good friend called Lowell. If you can see the signature Lowell, his last name is Simpson. And Lowell and I, during the 17 years we taught in the same school, became great friends. In fact, he came over to England in 1997 to be best man at my wedding to my second wife. And the novel that we studied during those years in certain classes was Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And naturally, back in that time, Dickens had many Victorian expressions and references and uses of language and so on. And Lowell is 15 years younger than I. and we used to kibitz around a lot with this kind of language. So let's read what Lowell says. Dear Rex, I've had large experience with boys, acting as if I'm a student in one of his classes, and you're the best of the lot. I hope now that you're leaving this vale of tears, finally amount to something. After all, you have that growed and gentle folk to be a haunter to us all. And so this is something of the Victorian flavor of Charles Dickens. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this program today, even though it was a little bit of a departure from my usual 95% recitations on the videos. So anyway, if you have not yet done so, I hope you will subscribe below. Thank you.